God, you still have the baby football. People
It's not a baby. It's a Hannity. Listen.
Okay.
You don't have an Ingraham football. This is a Hannity football.
Okay, Hannity. People are begging us online to come up with a new shtick. I think you need to get it like a
well, that's
a
up to you. Why don't you be smart, witty, and funny, and then I don't have to worry about it.
No, how about a martini glass? We'll have a different drink every night.
You know, it's so funny. People say, "Wow, you're like brother and sister. You guys." And I'm like, yeah, kind of.
We've been fighting for only 20 years. Okay, pass me the stupid football.
All right,
Go.
pass me the stupid football.
Go.
Okay, ready?
Pass it.
Touchdown, Hannity.
Oh, no, I won.
Boom.
Spike
Have
the
a great
football.
show.
All right, see ya. Good evening from Washington. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle. The FBI and Bob Mueller are caught playing fast and loose with the truth. Andy McCarthy is here to expose the details behind their outrageous double dealing. And also, why are the media so obsessed with John McCain's funeral plans? Wow, we're going to reveal it. Plus, the Kanye effect is growing. A pastor is now calling on African Americans to consider how illegal immigration is damaging their communities. He'll join us. In breaking just moments ago, a powerful New York Democrat forced to resign after shocking allegations of assault. We'll bring you all the details. But first, 3 women, 1 double standard. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Today, the First Lady announced her formal agenda for the remainder of her husband's time in office. Her Be Best initiative will focus on the well-being of children, both online and off, tackling teen opioid addiction, suicide, depression, and cyberbullying.
Social media can be both positively and negatively affect on our children, but too often it's used in negative ways. When children learn positive online behaviors early on, social media can be used in productive ways and can affect positive change.
Oh, it's fantastic. But of course, CNN couldn't let the First Lady have her moment.
Her husband has been known to be a name caller on Twitter and talk aggressively on Twitter. She addressed this today in her speech with the president sitting right there in the front row. Now, I think what she's saying there is she's going to do this in spite of her husband's tweets, maybe even because of his behavior. But let's focus on the next generation, these kids getting bullied, these kids facing really serious issues in social media and going forward with it no matter what he does.
Yeah, she was doing the whole thing as an attack on her husband. Oh, my God, that's ridiculous. Let me get this straight. Where Michelle Obama was celebrated by the press and the celebrity set for her Let's Move initiative, Melania Trump's effort is treated skeptically before it even began. Yesterday, the Washington Post used the occasion to speculate on the Trumps' private relationship, including their sleeping arrangements, or whether they spend much time together at all. The obscene rumor mongering continued at today's White House briefing.
There are persistent rumors that Mrs. Trump does not live in this White House and that she lives with her parents somewhere in the suburbs. What do you make of those rumors?
I make of the fact that just when you think the Washington Post can't get things any more wrong, they do, and that is an outrageous and ridiculous claim.
Now, I remember Michelle Obama being lauded for having different priorities from her husband and for being a strong, independent woman. But now that the Trumps occupy the White House, the press takes every opportunity to define the First Lady only through what they view as her husband's shortcomings.
She wakes up in her own bedroom, not something we normally see. She doesn't eat with the president, and she really lives a life similar to a lot of moms out there.
President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump are living essentially separate lives within the White House as the subject of a major Washington Post report today. The White House dismissed it as tabloid gossip.
Trump goes for the kiss and, saved by the hat. That is more than a hat. That is a defensive perimeter.
Gosh, I wish we had a funny late-night comedian. Now, except for a brief moment during the Lewinsky affair, I don't recall this kind of granular relationship coverage when Bill and Hillary Clinton, of course, were in the White House. Now, If you want to know why the media has trained its sights on the First Lady, it's simple. She's a real asset to the president, and her popularity is soaring. A new CNN poll released today shows that Melania's favorability has gone from 47% in January to 57% today. She's even jumped 15 percentage points with Democrats. Imagine if we had a fair press. Melania Trump is also a presidential spouse, let's face it, who brushes off the celebrity culture and avoids politics. Where Michelle wanted to retool everything from nutrition guidelines to school lunches, and Hillary wanted to remake all of health care, Melania just wants to help kids' well-being and also to raise her son. Now that brings me to the media coverage of Gina Haspel, President Trump's nominee to head the CIA. If confirmed, she'll be the first woman to ever serve the agency for 33 years, most of it undercover. So why won't the left cheer her for breaking the glass ceiling? You know why? Because killing off her nomination would hurt Trump, and because she carried out her duty as instructed.
The White House is standing by their CIA pick, Gina Haspel, despite reports she tried to back out last week and despite her history with waterboarding.
Why support her, given the refusal to declassify critical information about a tape that she reportedly wiped?
Her support for U.S. torture programs after 9/11, the fact that she headed up a secret U.S. detention camp in Thailand, that somebody was waterboarded there under her watch.
Dun, dun, dun. Well, the truth is, Haspel oversaw a detention facility in Thailand in 2002 where a few al-Qaeda operatives were waterboarded. But they make it sound like she invented the interrogation technique. She did not. It was authorized by George W. Bush and approved by his legal team, who briefed Congress on it. There was further static about Haspel being involved, as you heard, with the destruction of nearly 100 tapes of interrogations. A newly declassified review shows that she did not order the tape's destruction. Her superior did, and with good reason. The anti-Trump bullies almost drove Haspel to withdraw her nomination, but she's holding firm. Good for her. Those vilifying her are despicable. I am very disappointed in Rand Paul for opposing her nomination as well. But the media have found one woman with a Trump connection to actually salute. It's a woman they literally roll out the red carpet for. Porn star Stormy Daniels.
Come on, Stormy, stop making such a big deal about this. Everyone knows it's just an act.
I work in adult films. We're not really known for our acting.
Just tell me, what do you need for this to all go away?
A resignation.
That her star is rising as a result of all of this. You know, I saw Avenatti defending himself yesterday, saying this is all part of a maximum PR campaign, a maximum PR, maximum pressure campaign to get whatever Stormy Daniels wants.
So you see, Stormy has been elevated by the cultural, political, and now the prosecutorial establishment. Now, it's amazing to watch the media disparage and attack women of real substance, while they laud a woman who spends most of her time hanging off a pole, half or completely naked. A porn star who's already signed a detailed letter, by the way, stating that she had no affair with Donald Trump. But now she's changed her story to sell tickets to her strip act. Her greatest accomplishment may be stripping the Mueller investigation of all credibility. So let the media applaud their darling of the moment. She's actually a good representative of what they've become. But for America, we're going to stick with substance and truly independent women. And that's the angle. Joining me now for reaction in New York is Tammy Bruce, who's the president of Independent Women's Voice and a Fox News contributor. Also in New York is Kathy Areu, a liberal analyst and publisher of Catalina magazine. And with me on set is Anita McBride, who was chief of staff to First Lady Laura Bush. Great to have all of you strong, independent, and smart women of substance on the show with me tonight. I want to start with you, Anita. I was so angered by what, first of all, they've done to Melania from the very beginning, ridiculing her accent, talking about how she's in prison. That's the meme, Free Melania. And now this. She rolls out this new initiative, and it's dismissed and denigrated before it even begins. Double standard?
Absolutely. And I think it's great, number one, that you are covering this tonight, because she is a woman of substance. And I have to say, there's no question in my mind why the polls are in her favor. It's because people are beginning to see a lot more of her. She has beautifully represented us overseas as a graceful and gracious First Lady. Her first state dinner was flawless. And also, now we know, we've seen her with children. She's authentic with children. She cares about them. You could see it. This was perfect. Initiative for her to talk about how we should everybody that touches the life of a child has a responsibility to help them lead a better life. That's what she talked about today.
Kathy Rue, I want to go to you here, because I've been hearing so much from women and more left of center women that it's time for women. It's the woman's moment. It's the Me Too moment. Of course, we're going to get to Schneiderman later, but we got the Me Too movement. We got women breaking glass ceilings everywhere. It's a good thing.
Right.
Here we have a First Lady who has not really delved into politics. This is all new to her. Mm-hmm. She takes a while to, get her footing. She announces this initiative today, and what she's introduced with by the Washington Post is a story filled with anonymous sources claiming to know when the president and the First Lady eat together, not eat together, and in the White House briefing room saying she doesn't even live at the White House. I mean, don't you think we'd know if the First Lady didn't live at the White House? Your reaction to this?
Well, I wrote for the Washington Post for over a decade, and we had great sources. Many of my sources were anonymous, and they were solid sources. And I stand by the Washington Post and their reporting. And the problem is, the irony is that she's going after cyber bullies. That's her initiative, and her husband is known as a cyber bully. So I think that's the problem with her initiative. It just so happens that the day she does it, he's tweeting angry tweets. So it's unfortunate, because she is trying to do the right thing with this initiative, and he's almost like canceling it out.
It's unfortunate okay. Yeah. It's unfortunate. You had to say it's unfortunate. Okay. Yeah. Michelle did the Let's Move initiative. Right. She got Congress she frankly really put the pressure on Congress to push this $5 billion initiative for school lunches. The thing was a total disaster. Okay, kids hated the lunches. They threw them away. They made videos about them. And you can get in on this, Tammy. Did you ever hear a member of the media criticize Michelle for a school lunch initiative that fell flat across the board? Was well-intentioned? I'm sure it was. We have to get rid of obesity. All that's good. On the substance, there wasn't even criticism of Michelle. It was all push-ups on Ellen and going on Fallon and on the cover of 50 million magazines, and she's most beautiful, that's fine. But come on.
Well, from the legacy
double
media.
Standard here is pathetic. I'm enraged by this. I think it's so unfair.
Look, it was the legacy media was quiet. Talk radio talked about it. The blogosphere talked about it. The Town Hall of America talked about it, because it was those families, those homes where kids were coming home and we're not getting nutrition. It became a real negative problem. And then even when we recognized this, there was a refusal to adjust it. And so, that became, and look, she was involved in policy, a powerful advocate. And usually if you implement something that doesn't work, you might want to change it. But there was none of that. And here what we've got, and even just recently, Mrs. Obama complained again about women who voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah, let's listen to that. We actually have this, Tammy. I want to play it for all three of you. Let's watch.
Good.
In light of this last election, I'm concerned about us as women and how we think about ourselves and about each other. What is going on in our heads where we let that happen? So I do wonder, what are young girls dreaming about if we're still there?
Anita McBride, this is one more example of liberal women denigrating the choices of conservative women. So if we decide Donald Trump is the right person for the country at the time, a lot of different Republican choices, we support, then we're stupid, we're acting against self-interest, we're dumb, and I guess we're sexist. I mean, it's Michelle Obama's comment, no one will say it, but I'll say it, is offensive. It's offensive to women who don't agree with her liberal leftist worldview.
And it's offensive to women who sure would like to see a woman president, but they want to see the right woman president. And we'll have that sometime in our lifetime. This was not the right time. This was not the right person. Didn't care about or project the issues that Americans, a lot of women like you and I care about. Security and prosperity. That was first and foremost.
Tammy.
Yeah, if I may chime in here. As a feminist, as a woman who worked in this line for most of my adult life, it was supposed to be about, and we've achieved this, women thinking for themselves, making choices that were best for themselves and their families. And now that is being denigrated. This should be celebrated, that women are making a choice based on what's good for them, not based on what an establishment or a celebrity is, or a political celebrity is telling them to do. And this is what's damaging, and I think what, thank goodness, American women are rejecting, because the notion that we are, in fact, responsible for ourselves, and when Mrs. Obama wonders, what are we thinking? We're thinking about the future. We're thinking if we can afford to pay the rent, if we can clothe our children, if we can get our children into the schools that will serve them best. These are the decisions we made. And with Donald Trump, we clearly made the right decision. So this is now what the modern feminist movement is about, and it's got to be embraced. And fortunately, it is with the Trumps in office.
All right, it's a big country. We can all agree, disagree. It's fine. It's supposed to be pro-choice, except in politics, I guess. Speaking of double standards, by the way, I want you all to react here. As I said, the New York State's Attorney General, Democrat Eric Schneiderman, has resigned tonight. It comes just after hours after an explosive report from the New Yorker magazine where 4 women accused him of horrific acts of physical abuse. Now, despite his resignation, Schneiderman is denying the accusations, but he's been a champion, let's not forget, of the Me Too movement. Earlier this year, he even denounced Harvey Weinstein, saying, "We have never seen anything as despicable as what we've seen here." Kathy Aru, Schneiderman, I believe he's also the guy to go after the Trump Foundation, if my memory serves me correct. But look, this can't be a fun night for any Democrat.
No,
we had Kirsten Gillibrand saluting him as the leader for women's issues. I just sent out a tweet. Follow me on Twitter. You'll see the comment from her. Your reaction?
I think it's awful. If this is true, it's truly awful. He was a rising star in the Democratic Party, so this is awful. If true, if this is in fact true, then no woman can stand behind this. No feminist can stand behind this. I can't stand behind this. So it's sad. It's a horrible day for the Me Too movement. It's a horrible day for women, men, everyone, politicians, the Democratic Party. Everyone involved. This is awful news, and I don't think anyone likes to hear that this happened. I find it disgusting.
Look, I am actually going to say, look, if allegations are true, I think we should all say that. He's not convicted in a court of law. I wish people would preface everything they say about Donald Trump in the same way. If these allegations are true, if everyone just assumes, oh, it's all true because Stormy Daniels has a guest spot on Saturday Night Live. Here's a couple of tweets from Schneiderman. I'll let the other women on the panel respond. No one is above the law, and I'll continue to remind President Trump and his administration of that fact every day. October 11, 2017. Another tweet. Without the reporting of the New York Times and the New Yorker and the brave women and men who spoke up about the sexual harassment that they endured at the hands of powerful men, there would not be the critical national reckoning underway. Tammy Bruce, national reckoning.
This is typical. Look, this is typical. All these men, these liberal men, clothe themselves in the cloak of feminism. And Weinstein did the same thing. Bill Clinton was doing the same thing. It was all about we're your protectors, we're your advocates, and that had kept them safe. This is about power. It's about complete control. And with the report, again, if true, is not about sexual harassment, but physical violence and perhaps even some crimes. And the dynamic now here in New York is going to get very complicated. But this is not unusual. It sits within the same kind of template that we saw with Weinstein and everyone else in this framework. And I think liberals have to think about what is it about men on that side. Again, I'm still a registered Democrat in California. What is it that they've given them a pass for so long because they've had power and they said, effectively, we will do this, but we will protect you otherwise, and that otherwise the entire narrative of the liberal agenda will collapse if you don't protect us. This is falling apart, and it's not going to end.
Well, it's not just Democrats. I mean, this cuts across party lines, but
not as much. Laura, but not as much.
Not of the high-profile people. You're right, but look, we've all seen the more left-leaning media over the years kind of look the other way. I heard about that Weinstein thing 20 years ago, and I think a lot of people knew about that. Anita, again, Schneiderman was one of the most anti-Trump people out there, hitting him at every turn, even about consensual relationships alleged. Your reaction to close out?
Well, I think he is right about one thing. No one is above the law, and the law will play out.
Great panel. Independent, smart, strong women. I love it. Thank you all. And Bob Mueller is suddenly on the defense after the special counsel's very bad week in court. In just a minute, Andy McCarthy breaks down the explosive details and what to expect next. Coming up.
I'm very proud of the fact that I served. I was a C-130 mechanic in the Corps, so I'm not happy unless my hands are dirty. Between running a business and 4 kids, we're busy.
Ooh, we now know that the FBI didn't believe that Michael Flynn lied to agents during his interview about his conversations with Russia's ambassador to the United States. But the special counsel prosecuted Trump's former national security advisor for making false statements to the FBI anyway. That duplicity was revealed Friday when key redactions were removed from the House intel report on the Russia investigation. To tell us why all this matters and what it means, from New York is former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy. Andy, this is so wild. Why these redactions are being done, the justification for continuing to remove critical, exculpatory information from these documents. Tell the Fox viewers what they need to understand about this tonight.
Well, it was really outrageous the way this was done, Laura. It was on Friday night that they dumped out the unredactions of what they had previously redacted. And what we learned when you compared the 2 documents, once we got the new passages shown, is that what they had tried to conceal was the information that was exculpatory in nature about Flynn and the information that actually went to their decision-making process, including how they investigated Flynn, the fact that they couldn't get their story straight about what the basis of considering him to be a criminal suspect were. It just really very depressing for somebody who is proud of having come from the Justice Department and working there for such a long time. I mean, some of the stuff they held back was actually public information that was out already, but they didn't want to put it in the context that it came up in the report because it calls into question the prosecution of Flynn.
Yeah, so from the beginning, one could then surmise that the screws were turned on Flynn after he had those conversations with the Russian ambassador. I think he thought he was allowed to have conversations. He's the incoming national security advisor. Sally Yates rushes over to his office, the acting attorney general, brings a couple agents, including Peter Strzok, and he said, yeah, I'll answer questions. He didn't even have a lawyer present, it's my understanding. He just sat down and answered questions.
Yeah, and here's why this is so bad, Laura. If you want to have, they say they're pursuing a counterintelligence investigation. You got a guy like Flynn who's got a big intelligence background. He's a combat veteran of the United States, actually wrote a book in 2016 that labeled Russia as an enemy of the United States, right? So if you really want to advance your intelligence knowledge and you have a recording of Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador, what you would do is play the recording for Flynn and ask him, what did this mean? What did that mean? So you can enhance your understanding, right? What they did instead was ask him questions about a conversation they had a recording of.
Yeah, they already knew about it.
What good reason is there for that other than to try to get him to trip up?
Yeah, well, we'll get to Ellis's comments about how the Mueller investigators have been operating in a moment. Judge Ellis, I want to play a flashback from when Jim Comey sat down with Brett Baier and he was asked a specific question about Mike Flynn. Let's watch.
Did you tell lawmakers that FBI agents didn't believe former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was lying intentionally to investigators?
No.
You did not
and
tell
I saw that in the media. I don't know what. Maybe someone misunderstood something I said. I didn't believe that and didn't say that.
Wow. What about that, Andy?
Well, I guess to split hairs, I guess if you were inclined to do that, what he said, and they quote him in the report, is that the agents didn't detect any physical signs of somebody who was trying to
conceal
deceive
something.
them.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I really,
Right.
we're at like how many angels on the head of a pin time to try to split those hairs, right?
All right. So Devin Nunes is just hot and bothered about the fact that he can't get documents, or they're redacted for seemingly no good reason. And so he's basically threatened Jeff Sessions, Attorney General, with contempt if this stuff doesn't start coming over to the Hill. Sessions today came out and he said, look, I'm willing to sit down with him, got his attention. The White House, apparently through Mark Short, the domestic policy advisor, said, we're supportive of our cabinet members. Joaquin Castro, the congressman from Texas, was on CNN this afternoon. Let's watch what he said.
This probably wouldn't be happening unless the White House somehow gave its blessing to go around and somehow punish Jeff Sessions through the Congress.
Your experience with Devin Nunes, does he ever do anything that goes against what the White House wants?
No, I think at this point, well, not at this point, for a while now, he has basically been somebody who's doing the White House's bidding.
I mean, I wanted to scream out objection leading.
Right.
I mean, from Blitzer. I mean, that's an anchor asking a question. Like, don't you think Trump's a jerk? Yeah, you know, come on. Your reaction to that's always bashing Devin Nunes. He's the boogeyman. He's the bad guy. Meanwhile, they don't go to the substance of the problem here.
Yeah, well, it's remarkable that, you know, here Nunes, I think, is actually doing the work of the people in terms of somebody having a check on what's gone on in these investigations. And it's appropriate that that be investigated. And it's just remarkable to me, right as we're looking at this report that has these redactions that are so ridiculous that even the Justice Department can't justify them. That's why they put them out. So you have to wonder, everything else that they're withholding, why are they withholding it? And yet they're attacking Nunes. You would think they would be attacking the people who were, you know, holding back the documents. The one fair criticism I think they make is that ultimately the president's in charge of the executive branch, and he's got to do, to my mind, he's got to do a lot more than tweet that he's angry that there's not enough cooperation. I think he needs to, like, start giving people orders to cooperate.
And finally, Judge Ellis, Eastern District of Virginia. You know him well. I know him well. No-nonsense judge. Reagan appointee. He put this. He was pretty adamant on Friday with the special counsel's office that it seems like, you know, they don't really care about Manafort. They want to use Manafort to get Trump. Your reaction to that back and forth? Andy Napolitano said people are kind of exaggerating the importance of what happened on Friday.
Well, they may be exaggerating the importance in the sense that I don't think the case against Manafort is going to disappear, even if the judge were to strike the indictment. I don't think he's about to do that. But my main reaction, Laura, is that I'm glad that finally the questions that we've been asking for a year about the special counsel's jurisdiction, about the noncompliance of the Justice Department with the regulations in choosing him, about the way this investigation has been conducted from soup to nuts. They've been able to ignore the peanut gallery, but this is a federal judge who's asking the same hard questions, and they have to deal with them.
All right, everybody read Andy's great piece in National Review about this whole redaction, withholding of documents mess. Andy, thanks so much.
Thanks, Laura.
And up next, how John McCain's 11th hour Trump bashing is exposing the media, well, as a pack of two-faced opportunists. You're not going to want to believe this. You won't believe it. Stay there.
It's time to pick a used car.
I really don't want to get rid.
The Atlantic ran a piece during the 2008 presidential campaign titled McCain the Sellout, based on a fear that the candidate might govern as a conservative. And in a 2010 Vanity Fair piece headlined, The Man Who Never Was. McCain is called so desperate to keep his Senate seat that he, quote, repudiated his record, his principles, and even his maverick reputation, entrenching himself as the anti-Obama. We're here to talk about McCain. The man is James H. Warner. He was a POW with him during the Vietnam War. Jim was a POW for 6 years and also my old colleague in the Reagan administration, a former policy advisor to President Reagan. And Frank Luntz, esteemed pollster. He's going to show how the media have used McCain over the years to fit whatever narrative that they find convenient at the moment. It's great to see both of you. Jim, I want to talk to you first. First of all, it's great to see you. Long time. I was young. You were you were even more handsome back then. Back in 1987, sharing an office together.
That's before I took on the appearance of a homeless person.
Oh no, we like the whole. It's all cool here. Jim, look, you better than anyone know the experience that John McCain had in Vietnam. You've known him for a long time. I know you haven't seen him for a while. But does it surprise you that he at the end decided, he was going to make his funeral plans and make it explicit that Trump was not to be there?
Yes, it does. But I don't know how far advanced this cancer is. But I know that I was told that it is very aggressive. And to say the things like he did about Sarah Palin, look, I was with him. I warmed up an audience for him the day after the convention in a big rally north of Detroit. And he tried to introduce me to Sarah Palin. And we couldn't get near her because she was just mobbed by people. He was there at the convention when he introduced her, and he saw the electricity. I'll tell you how it affected us. We were up in a booth. I turned to my left. I was sitting next to Bud Day, the most decorated American warrior in all history. And Bud had tears in his eyes. He was so moved. And that's what the effect she had. So for him to be doing that, I'm not going to hold anything against John for what he says in the last year. I don't know how much this disease has affected him, but the John that I know was one of the greatest heroes I ever knew. I'm one of the finest men I ever knew.
Frank Luntz, it is interesting to go back and see those headlines from all of the elite publications. John McCain, the sellout. John McCain, the phony fraud, all the things they said. But now he's hitting Trump. And, he's obviously been at odds with Trump on a number of policies, immigration, foreign policy, trade, to name a few. And now, not just because I think he's obviously suffering terribly. I've lost 3 friends to glioblastoma in the last few years. It's a horrific disease. But you see the ebb and flow of their relationship.
Well, it happened in 2000 when he was running against W. It happened in 2008 with Mitt Romney. So this is nothing new. And John McCain understood how to use the press to his own advantage. It's one of the reasons why he's such a good politician. And by the way, I want you to know that it is an honor to sit next to you. And frankly, I feel the same way about any of these men. They suffered, truly suffered in prisoner of war. And it was Donald Trump, I don't know if you remember, who I was asking him questions in Iowa. And it was my interview where he said that John McCain's not a war hero. Now, he walked that back later on. But McCain and the press, it seems like a pretty good relationship.
Well, this is what S.E. Cupp said today on, I believe it was CNN. Let's watch.
He is not a sellout. And I think having President Trump, just because he's the president, come speak on his behalf or eulogize him or memorialize him would be selling out. And Senator McCain, I say this not just as his daughter's best friend, but as a Republican who supported him. Senator McCain is everything that President Trump is not.
I have to say that somebody should have told Donald Trump before he said that about John. John was hit by a SAM, and he ejected, and his airplane was just disintegrating. One of the wings came off, and as soon as his chute opened, it broke the wing swung around, broke both of his arms and one of his legs. So I don't know how he was able to open up his Mae West, much less how he could swim. I have no idea how he survived in the lake, but I know that he could not possibly have done any resistance because he was helpless for several weeks after that. Bud Day had to take care of him. Bud Day had to feed him.
Could you hear him where you were in the Hanoi Hilton? Could you?
I lived with him for 2 years.
Okay, in the same, but you were separated because you were there for 6 years and you were separated for a long time.
Yeah, but in '71, there was a big uprising amongst us, and John McCain, even though Bud Day was a senior man in his cell, John McCain was credited with being the leader of that. And in fact, on March 19, they took 36 of us out. We honestly thought we were being taken out to be executed. And John McCain made a joke about it.
Wow.
A man who can volunteer to die for religious freedom. That's what it was. And make a joke about it is really a top guy in my, I mean, I hold him almost the same status as James Stockdale.
Wow. Well, you know, to just hear these stories, Frank.
And he wouldn't go home. They said to him, go home.
Yeah.
But because he wasn't in terms of being captured, he refused, and so they beat him for it. And those that are critical of him, because they don't like how he's voted on certain issues, who among us in this studio would give our legs, our arms, our body, our lives for the country?
But he also said it's fine. He also said, I think at one time, like, well, I was a POW, but we can disagree. I mean, just because, like, there are a lot of, like, John Kerry was, you know, he served his country proudly on the Bronze Star of his. But we disagreed with him on a lot of issues. So it's okay to disagree with people. It's just because you disagree with him on a lot of issues. And I assume you wouldn't disinvite Trump to your funeral, but that's his decision. He wants to do that. But the media are playing this cynically, Frank. That's what I'm saying. They're playing it when he's with the conservatives, when he was running for re-election. He's strong on immigration. He's strong. They were hitting him. But when he's hitting Trump, it's a different deal.
I hope that he is still alive. I hope that he still gets a chance to see that in the end, in so many areas, not all, that he was right, that he was courageous, and that in the end, there is someone that we can say to our children, that is a role model. And think of how few role models we have today.
No, I don't like what they said about Sarah Palin. I don't think that was necessary. And I think if you don't want Trump to be at your funeral, you can just say, you can make it known. I don't think you have to, like, write it in the book or whatever. I mean, look, you can do it. Everyone can do what they want, but, like, there's a way to get that message out without,
But that's not his career. We should not judge him by those things.
I say what he's saying right now, I can't, you know, I don't know how much that disease has affected him, but I know it's the frontal lobes, and that's where you think.
And by the way, Jim, when you were, because you showed me this book, you wrote a calculus book. Was that right?
Yes.
In
6
years.
Analytic geometry, calculus, and differential
You showed it to me
equations.
at the White House. I was like 23. I was like, I still don't understand calculus. You're writing this while you're a prisoner of war for like 100 pages on this tiny little book. And I tell that story all the time.
Actually, it's now in the Marine Corps archives. You can go to Quantico and see them.
Of course it is. You are amazing. I love you and I adore you. Frank, thank you for being with us. It's a great conversation. And God bless John McCain, his entire family. It is a brutal disease. We need to find a cure for all cancers, but glioblastoma is especially awful. And coming up, will Trump finally kill the Iran deal tomorrow? Wow. Victor Davis Hanson and Ian Bremmer tell us next. The Trump administration's trade negotiators left Beijing on Friday with no sign of a deal to level the playing field. That caused some analysts to worry that President Trump's application of tariffs and public pressure on China isn't working. Other analysts, however, believing that Beijing will eventually have to agree to a deal because it's so dependent upon the United States for trade. Let's get a read on the negotiations from a National Review columnist, Victor Davis Hanson, of the Stanford Hoover Institute, and NYU professor Ian Bremmer, who's the author of the great new book, Us Versus Them. VDH, let's start with you. Coming up empty, or is this just the normal process? It's not going to happen overnight. We didn't lose ground to China overnight, and we're not going to have a deal with China overnight either.
Yeah, I think it's part of the art of the deal, negotiating style of Trump. And then Trump, when he came into office, I think everybody realized there was an asymmetry with China, whether it was patent infringement or copyright or technology appropriation from American companies and dumping and cyber warfare, et cetera, and that theory that if we were to give these concessions to China in the early 80s, we would bring them into the family of nations, and then their affluence and their economic boom would make them democratized, and they would be a sort of a helpful player in the world scene. That's been revealed to be flawed. And I think it's sort of thematic of a lot of these asymmetrical, the Iran deal, the open borders, the NATO contributions that we thought what was normal really wasn't. It was predicated on the idea that we were so strong and powerful, we could always make concessions. And then in 2016, the people in between the coasts said, you know what, we don't want to make concessions because we're not as powerful, at least we aren't, and as affluent as you people who create these deals. So there's a domestic political element in all of these a negotiation that Trump has to be careful about.
And it is interesting to see how Trump has shifted the debate on China. I was going back and just Googling, like, Trump was right on China. Like, Financial Times, I'm paraphrasing, but Financial Times, Marco Rubio's way over on, probably to the right of Trump on China. And now it's pretty much commonly thought China's cheating on a whole host of issues. They're stealing a lot of our intellectual property. And they are poised to eclipse the United States in a lot of different ways, unless we recalibrate at least the playing field. Where do things stand now? Then we're going to move to the Iran deal real quick.
Yeah, well, they are more powerful, right? They're a larger economy. Their ability to promote their own companies, because they're not becoming a free market economy, is making it much harder for the Americans to have access. Trump has been hitting them particularly hard on the technology side, and that's where, frankly, we don't have a lot of interdependence. That's where I think the relationship is going to be more challenging. On trade, they want to export to us. We want to import from them, and it's a lot of our companies that are actually manufacturing there and exporting to the United States. I don't think the headline is going to lead to a trade war. I think both sides will actually end up negotiating.
Let's go to you, VDH, on the issue of the Iran deal. Big decision tomorrow. Here's the headline from the Telegraph tonight. If Trump scraps the Iran nuclear agreement, why should North Korea make its own deal with America? That's the conventional wisdom. It's going to be bad for North Korean negotiations. I think you can make the other argument. You could say it actually shows that Trump will not sign on to a deal that he views as not in our interest or the interest of our Middle Eastern allies. Your reaction to this potential move?
I agree with the latter interpretation that North Korea will get a message that if it's not symmetrical, it's not going to stand the test of time. But more importantly, we shouldn't even be here, because that should have been a treaty, and Obama did not have the votes in the Congress, the Senate, and so he went around them. And the sad thing about it, they were bleeding about 125 to 150 billion a year from those really tough sanctions. I give Obama's administration credit for finally ratcheting it up. Over the life of this first 10 and then the additional 5 years, they're going to have about $500 billion to $700 billion that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And we can see where that's going. It's going to destroy Syria. It's going to shoot missiles into Saudi Arabia. It's going for Hezbollah. And it's going to, it wasn't more than 6 months after this treaty, and they were shooting a missile at the USS Truman. They hijacked an American boat, and they sort of humiliated people. So it didn't have the added effect of affecting their missile program or their behavior. And I don't think they were going to be able to produce any nuclear weapons in that 10-year period, because they had civil unrest and their economy was ruined. And now they've got a green light in 10 years, and I think they'll take advantage of it.
Ian, where does this stand tonight?
Well, two things I would say. The first is that we know that all of America's allies in Europe strongly oppose the United States leaving by ourselves. The French and the German leaders were here asking Trump to give them some time so that they could try to come up with what would be a tougher deal against the Iranians. If I was advising Trump right now, I'd say, you know what? May 12th is your deadline. Say that you listen to the allies, give them 2 more months, and then if it turns out they don't come up with anything else, you say it's their fault. You listen to the allies, you have the ability to blame them. If they give you something better, then you're a hero, and you've also got better credibility in Iran. Also, one other point, Trump never brings up the fact that the one thing the Americans care about, not the Middle East, but they want oil prices down. And this deal is actually keeping them down. If he rips it up, prices going back up. That hurts the Americans.
Fascinating. Guys, we'll be watching tomorrow. Thanks so much. Up next, the Kanye effect may be catching fire. Stay there.